Totally. It gave us a
Yeah.
big fat dose of empathy. We're like, God, this is hard. This isn't easy. And it takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, truly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Biz Dev Podcast, the podcast about developing your business. I'm David Baxter, your host, joined per usual by Gary Voigt, who's rocking green this week. This is how boring my life is. I comment on your clothing. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I know I feel targeted every week, but then at the same time, I just feel bad for you. So I just let you take your little
It's
stash.
all I have to live
We're
for,
good.
man. So thank you. Thank you very much. More importantly, we are joined by Ann Powell, who is the co-founder of Offset Collective. Hello and welcome.
Hi, guys. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, jumping in. Tell me about Offset Collective. What do you do there?
Yeah, so Offset is a brand strategy consultancy. And what that means is that we work with clients of all shapes and sizes to help them understand their customers, their clients, really get clear on their competitive distinction and tell their story in a way that is meaningful and that resonates with the people that they're trying to reach. So we do a lot of work in the strategy space. We do a lot of consumer research, market analyses, and then we build brands through both messaging platforms and design. We do a lot of brand work as well, branding
Do
work
you
as well.
consider yourself, is that just a fancy word for a marketing company?
It is the part that comes
Okay.
before
So
marketing. Yes. So if you're thinking about marketing, your brand strategy, if marketing is the sort of the packaging, brand strategy, and the messaging piece, that's what goes in it. If that's the vehicle, and marketing is the vehicle that
do
takes
you
it to market.
partner with a different company?
It's all part of the same larger. We do. We work with marketing companies who build website, who execute digital marketing and social media marketing strategies. And we also partner with PR companies who do sort of corporate communications, public relations,
Well,
and
you
media
don't do
relations
that.
and influencer work.
That's
We
interesting.
do not. That's the collective
Okay.
piece. Yep. That's the collective piece. So we have a pretty robust network of individual partners as well as partner agencies who kind of tag in where our Venn diagrams of service overlap enough that we can be two halves of a whole go-to-market strategy marketing program where we do the research and the positioning and the creative. So we build that initial brand and then a marketing company will come in. Digital marketing is really a lot of what that sort of
Mhm.
second piece is these days. Not always, but then one of our partner agencies will come in and say, great, you have this positioning platform, you have the UVP established, you have all these kind of foundational pieces. Now we're going to turn it into a website, or now we're going to turn it into a social campaign, or now we're going to turn it into an event. So we don't actually do the operationalization of those strategies, but we do build the
So
foundational
why
piece.
go that route as opposed to just blow up and do it all?
It's a really good question. And I think that if we had founded our company 10 years ago, probably pre-COVID, really the trend then, the culture in the agency world was full service,
Yeah.
to the point where a lot of agencies would hide the fact that they had freelancers or that they didn't have a service in-house. To me, it makes sense because we're able as an agency to have the flexibility to not carry the overhead of staffing a
Mhm.
full team, but for our clients too. And you just exactly gave the perfect example for this. We're able to pull in the right people to work on the project. And especially when you get into technology, there's so many different areas of practice that a generalist just can't do very well, whether it's technology or strategy. You have, I think, a group of roles that are more generalist, more multi-purpose. But when you get into some of the more specific things, you really do need to go and hire someone who has that skill set. And that skill set isn't used every day. So for us, it makes sense. We think it makes sense for our clients. We're able to have a team all over the world. We have team members from Hawaii to Scotland. We've got a pretty big group. And then, of course, agencies of all different shapes and sizes that we partner with are able to do things really well without the cost or bureaucracy of lots of layers of management and the telephone game of I'll have my people call
Nice.
your people.
So changing gears a second, what defines
Sure.
a good brand?
How long do you have? No, very simply. This is actually a very short answer. A good brand is a good brand is a brand that you can walk away from and say, man, they get me. They really get me. I'm a consumer and I look at a brand, whether it's an ad or an experience or walking into a store. I want someone, if I've done branding well, if I've done my brand and created a brand that is going to work hard for my business, people walk away from an experience with me and say, they totally got me. I think we all have the experience of laughing at a Super Bowl ad that we go, they got it. They got my parenting struggles. They got my work struggles, my relationship struggles. Good brands really get into the psychology of human existence and human behavior and tap into that and create a moment that's relevant that you can internalize and fall in love with a little bit because you feel
So let
seen.
me push on that for a second. So if I'm hearing you
Yeah.
right, a good brand is a strong opinion. You're going to put something forward that, because the only way you're going to get me is if you said something that I agree with, which means you're stating an opinion, you're making a stance of some sort. It could be a big one or a little one.
Yeah.
So if
100%.
I can imagine you've had clients who are nervous about that, because if you take a stand, you just tick someone off, like someone somewhere off. And is that not scary?
It's terrifying. It's really terrifying. And I think especially when the farther you get from the consumer space, the longer the sales cycle gets, the more varied your target audience becomes. Brands are afraid to really stand on a particular perspective or a statement because they don't want to they don't want to alienate anyone. But what's the expression? I'm going to butcher it. But if you're trying to speak to everyone, you're actually speaking to no one. And so I think I would just make one nuanced adjustment to your statement about having an opinion. It is having an opinion, but what you're really doing is saying something to someone that calls out their struggle, that calls out something that they may feel like they're alone in. Harley Davidson is a classic example. People of all ages, genders, races, nationalities love Harley, but there's a very small contingent of people who love Harley. And if you love Harley, you are deep. These are cult brands, right? These are brands people get tattooed on them. Harley Davidson is very comfortable making a statement. Freedom is everything, right? The freedom of the open road. We're going to deliver that to you. And people hear that and they go, that's what I want. They get me. They get that I want to be able to hop on my Harley with the loud exhaust pipe and make a statement. That's a really clear cut, very extreme example of a brand that's making a statement in the market. And they have a cult following. They've built a community around that sort of path of self-actualization that people want to be and strive for. A smaller, less obvious one, when you get into like Apple, is certainly just thinking like less freedom of the open road and more thinking of like subtle creativity. There's certainly lots of B2B brands that do this really well too, but they're not necessarily saying, damn the man, hop on your motorcycle and ride off into the sunset. They may be saying, if you choose this particular type of software, big company, you're going to be able to work fewer weekends. And that's not as big of a life-changing promise, but it's tapping into something that an executive somewhere is sitting around going, I have so much inefficiency on my team. I don't want to work weekends. This company has now said they're going to take care of all this. They're going to automate all these processes so I can finally go home to my family. So it's a spectrum, right? Of like how bold that statement is. And I think the bolder the statement, the more the fear, for sure.
So you mentioned B2B brands. If I'm Harley or I'm Apple or McDonald's, consumer brands, I can give you a warm fuzzy, right? That's ultimately what you're speaking about, whether it's a hamburger or a Harley. You want a warm fuzzy, so I'm going to go buy your product. If I am selling enterprise software, not a lot of, or chemical solution or whatever, harder to do the warm fuzzy. Is that possible? Or is that what you still aim for, or you go a different route?
It's a really good question. And I think it is, I think warm fuzzy falls on that same spectrum, right? A warm fuzzy, when I'm a consumer and I'm shopping for a motorcycle, my level of emotional commitment to that purchase is much deeper. So you're going to have to make that bigger statement. You're really going to have to go out there and capture my heart. If I'm a procurement officer in a B2B enterprise tech company, my emotional investment, let me back that up. If I'm a procurement leader in a B2B tech company, my emotional investment in that purchase is a lot lower. I still have goals. I still want my experience to be improved. I still want to have a better, day to day. I want to have a better day. I want this product to improve my day in some capacity. But the investment, the emotion there is less. So the warm fuzzy that I need in that conversation isn't as big and freedom of the open road. It's more about how can I incrementally improve your day with this product? So I think it does follow that same sort of, it's directly proportional to the emotional investment of the purchase.
Yeah.
And so when we talk to B2B brands and we say, look at Harley, they're like, but we're not Harley. We're not a consumer brand. And of course not. But there's still people buying. There's still a human person on the other side of that purchase. So that's one of the things that we always try to keep in mind is even though you're not a consumer brand, there's still a human being. There's still someone with daily struggles and challenges and a job to do who's on the other end of that conversation.
But if you're talking you mentioned procurement, now that's big boy stuff, right? You're in big company land there. But if you have a procurement, are you really trying to appease? Appeal. That's the word I'm looking for. Appeal to that procurement manager as a human, because they're buying on behalf of 10,000 people. So I would think part of their job is to say, I have to think beyond myself. I don't care about this software or that software because I'm not ever going to use it. Are you still trying to talk to that person, or are you trying to talk to a broader concept? I don't know. I don't even know how to phrase that.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Well, and that's
I
what
think you mean the situation that person might be in. Like you want to talk to what they might be looking for, not how it's going to make them feel. So I think you can
Yeah.
approach it in a way where you're speaking to them, but in less of a generic term and actually trying to use language that's going to hit a little bit deeper than just, we're good, we're cheap, buy us.
Yeah. And if you think of those, so if you, it's a really good question. And it's why B2B buying journeys are so big and ugly and complex, because you have a CIO who has a very different motivation for a software purchase than a procurement officer who has very specific goals. But if you take those two examples, and this is just as a for example, the conversation, the marketing message to the CIO, who might be the ultimate decision maker, is very different and might be about the software, might be about the experience and the efficiency and the business goals, where the conversation with the procurement team might be about the sales experience, might be about the customer service experience, might be about, you don't have to replace this product in 10 years like you do with others. So you got to do this once, probably in your career. So you're really speaking to the experience of whatever that person is that's having with your product. So whether it's that first purchase or whether it's a longer, more protracted experience with the product. It's about making people fall in love with your company and how you do business. I think there's a statistic that says 95 or like 99% of the sale has already been made before the first touch point. People know if they're going to if they want to buy your product or not. What they're looking for at this point is confirmation. When you do brand really well, if you have a brand that really connects with people, they're already convinced. You've already made the emotional sale. Now you just got to back it up with the logic of, yes, this is the right purchase to meet your needs. And so that's a lot of the lift that brand can do for marketing, is having that, putting that emotional connection out there so that when you get into the sales conversation, people are already wanting you to confirm that they've made the right emotional decision.
I have a question.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, one question
Yeah.
per podcast.
So, Ann, I'm assuming you work with both smaller companies and larger companies. And I
Correct.
know in today's marketing world, it's not just about plastering a message as far and wide as you can get, but you want to actually hone in into a specific target audience or a niche thing. And I know it's going to look very different for a smaller company versus a larger company. I wanted to get your take on what the difference between creating a audience and creating a community is, and how is that different for the small company versus the large company?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think
See
often
that, David?
people,
She's just being nice.
he said he got his one shot and he nailed it. You
She's
stuck
being
the landing,
nice.
Gary. It is a good question. I think people often conflate the two. I think that, especially as we've forayed into this jungle of social media, you think, oh, this is my social media community. And this is a group of people who might be engaged online around maybe the product that we offer, maybe the subject matter or the issues we resolve. In the case of technology companies, for example, people might be really involved around the subject of AI. And so you're able to have conversations in that social online setting that can be mistaken for community. But for us, when we think about community, it is the people and partners who rally around your brand in particular. You can have something to say, you have something valuable to say. And when you say something valuable that people go, cool, that's helpful, that's an audience. But when people come to you to say, what do you think about this topic? There's a new XYZ and technology leader. Look at people wait by the people wait in line like crazy for days to see the new Apple product. That's a community. When you're waiting to see the new Apple reveal, that's a community. Way back in the old days, one of the original, I should say, community builders is Vans. If you guys are
Oh
given
man, he's
your
gonna start
background there, you're
fanboying.
probably familiar.
Oh my
Very.
gosh.
Vans was the original community builder, right? Back in the day, they had events. They were a brand for skaters. Harley,
Been to a few
community
Or
World
builder.
wannabe
yes.
skaters like
They
Gary.
become
Okay.
Red Bull is another one. I think that the difference is nuanced. It's like when people are, community brings people together around a common interest. Community brings people together around a love, a passion, whether it's skateboarding or AI or cell phone technology or whatever it is. Community brings people together and they rally around that. And when you have a community around your brand, it's not about you. People don't come together to look at the new release of sneakers. They don't come together to look at the new release of a telephone device, a pocket calculator. They come together to see what Apple's going to enable them to do, the moments they're going to be able to capture with their new badass camera. And so I think that's a very subtle difference, but community is a drawing, a center of gravity that brings people together around a common interest or a common passion. An audience is a group of people who have come together to get information. So it's the difference of that sort of, am I here for my heart or am I here to take notes on features and information? So it's really coming together around something that people are passionate about.
Big Pixel builds world-class custom software and amazing apps. Our team of pros puts passion into every one of our projects. Our design-infused development leans heavily on delivering a great experience for our clients and their clients. From startups to enterprises, we can help craft your ideas into real-world products that help your business do better business.
The idea for us is that it's very easy to confuse why you're doing something, especially as a founder. I want to be the best consultant in the world. That's my why. Or I want to solve world hunger. That's my why. Well, what we really encourage people to look at, especially in these early days, is what is the need that you're meeting? What is that need that you're solving for people? Why should they choose you? Why should someone stop what they're doing or stop buying a certain product and buy yours instead? And really, it's about repositioning that why in the consumer experience and considering the context of what your customer, client, consumer is going through and how you can resolve their challenges versus focusing on why you're doing something or why you started your company. So we just like to make sure that when we're thinking about that idea of why, that we're focused on really making sure that the customer is the center of the experience.
So you talked about entrepreneurship and helping other companies. Give me a little bit about how that works in your company. What does that mean? That's a big deal to us as well. But how do you do that? Is it because you're collective and that's just how it works? Or give me more info to how you work with those tiny companies.
Okay, gotcha. So your question is how we support entrepreneurs and founders.
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to the bigger brands, stuff like we've been talking about, are you a part of that startup community that's really big here in the Raleigh area, or are you mainly focused on the larger brands? I get the feeling you're on both, but you do have a passion for the entrepreneurship.
We do both. We do both. And we support, it's two very different beasts to tame. And often our larger clients started as startups. And so it's really interesting to see to be able to have the luxury of a 30,000 foot view of that journey and where people are at the beginning versus where they end up 5, 10 years, 5 million, $10 million later, pardon me. And so most of our larger accounts are larger companies. We love startups. We love creative people. We love people. We are those people. We are obsessed with, we have an idea, let's push on and see where it can go. And so we love supporting founders of smaller startups and small teams. And we work with individual consultants as well. So it really just depends. And that tends to be, there isn't a guide by which we say, oh, you have to be a minimum of X employees, X revenue, X industry. We really just seek out people who want to do something interesting that they believe in, and then who believe that brand building and really creating a solid foundation and being human centric is an important part of that journey for them. And that happens in businesses of all sizes.
So one of the things that I've seen that you've said is you disagree with a lot of the build in public, scale fast kind of thing. Can you explain that? What's your differences of opinion?
I think that those things, some of those principles, I wouldn't necessarily say I wholesale
Fair.
disagree with those things, because I think some of those principles are true. I don't think they're one size fits all. I don't necessarily think that scaling fast is the right path for everyone. What I do think is that it's really critical for founders and entrepreneurs to try to be a little bit detached from their original idea. Well, this is a complicated one. While you should hold tight to your MVP and stay true to yourself and stay focused and really focus on that one true thing and not get distracted by shiny objects, it is also really important to be fearless about a failure and be fearless about delegation and very quickly realize what you can do versus what you cannot do. The quadrant of things I'm good at and that I love, things I'm not good at that I love, things I'm good at that I don't love. And it's like what's the urgent but not important versus the not important but urgent. And it's really about focusing. And I think when we get into sort of single washing this idea of got to fail fast, you got to build in public, you got to make sure some of those things are true, but I think it's really important to consider what is your industry? Who do you serve? What do you want to be in your business as a founder? Do you want to be the principal practitioner or do you want to scale? And you don't have to follow those rules. You really should take a step back and think about, what do I want my business to look like in 5 years, 10 years? Is this a path to retirement for me? Or is this a practice I want to stay in? Is this something I want to flip and sell? Or is this something I want to be doing as a legacy company, legacy brand?
I like that. We push really hard because we work with a lot of startups as well. We push really hard to get, but our way of looking at that is almost lifestyle versus investment, because there's so much pushing and scaling fast and going, all that lines up with that investment side, right? You need to go get a lot of money and run as hard as you can, as opposed to a lifestyle brand, which you can take your time as long as you're revenue focused. Clearly you have to make money in a lifestyle brand, but it changes the dynamic pretty dramatically. And there's not necessarily right or wrong answer, but it's a definite fork in the road, because once you go money, you can never go lifestyle. So you really should just take a moment. Because most people just, especially, I think there's something in the entrepreneur space that just says there is a right and wrong answer. And I just don't agree with it. I think there is a lot of answers and it just depends. And you just take a moment to figure out which one fits you and then go.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the consequences, and I think, more power to you if you want to take investment and grow a brand, even if you want it to be something that you stay in and you're the principal operator of, there's nothing wrong with having an investment. You have to enter it with open eyes, knowing what implications that has on your decision-making, on your growth path, whether you want to grow quickly or not. I think that the thing that's sort of the unfortunate consequence of that, like you said, is that people look and say there's a right and wrong way to do it. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing it right. And it's already really difficult as a founder, especially if you're going it alone. You look around and you think, oh my gosh, everyone else is successful except for me. And you don't stop and think, maybe they started with a grant, or maybe they started with an angel investment, or maybe they jumped from their previous company with a big client. And I think especially in the agency world, we tend to look, but in all businesses, we tend to look around and have that death by comparison where we're like, I'm a failure. But the reality is it's not one way or the wrong way. So I think that when we get into kind of saying this is the way to do startups, it can create problems down the road for folks who may be feeling forced to do it that way. Maybe they're not good at that. Maybe they're terrible at investor relations. Maybe they're just not good at asking for money. That doesn't make you a bad business owner. That doesn't make you a bad strategist or technology provider. It just makes you bad at asking for money. And so maybe that's not your path. So I think that's important. I think one of the things that we encourage founders to do is figure out what you're good at and what you love and do that. Figure out what's important and urgent and do that. Not waste time trying to spin your wheels or push that rock up a hill, whichever, pick your metaphor.
Speaking of founders, you're also the founder of another company, KickDry.
Correct. I'm a glutton for punishment. That's right.
Do you apply your same marketing and branding strategies to KickDry?
It's
How long
interesting.
has KickDry been around?
Yeah. So KickDry, my partner, KickDry was a client. And we have one of our clients is a group of investors who are wonderful, and they invest in brands that they see a potential for that may not yet be fulfilling that potential. And so we do some branding work for some of those brands. I've had some really lovely success with this team. Love working with them. About 1.5 years ago, we did a rebrand for this product, and we fell in love with it. We fell in love with this product. It was this fledgling product. It's a drying and deodorizing shoe insert. And we did the rebrand for it, and we just fell in love. And we very quickly realized this is something we wanted to have a little bit more investment in. And the 5 of us became partners. So my business partner and I, and then these 3 investors. And so we are operating partners of this consumer product brand. And what was really quickly apparent to us is that it is very different to be advisors to a founder than it is to actually be a founder trying to launch a business and lift that plane up off the ground. And so it was a really experience for us. And it was a gut punch, honestly, because we're like, wait, we got to do the actual marketing for this. We got to deal with product. We got to deal with the supply chain. We've got to deal with all this other stuff that we don't like. We understand intellectually that those pieces exist, but we're not in it every day on behalf of our clients. And so
did that make you reevaluate your approach to the strategy for other businesses then afterward? A little more consideration?
Totally. It gave us a big fat dose of empathy. We're like, God, this is hard. This isn't easy. And it takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, truly, to do what founders do every day. And so it gave us a perspective, I think, a couple things for our own business. It gave us the perspective to think about really getting down to what are those things that are important? What are the things that we're really good at, that our business needs, that our clients need? And not focus on the other stuff. Find partners who can help us take that other stuff, people who are specialized in those things that we shouldn't be focusing on, and really put our time and attention to what needs our time and attention as business owners. And then from a client perspective, to really, number one, sit down and go, we know how hard this is. We know how hard this repositioning is going to be. We know how hard it is to actually take a product to market, and be able to have that conversation with empathy and with the context of really what the day-to-day looks like. And that's given us a lot of good insight and helped us connect with our clients on a deeper level and help them find the right resources for that.
Okay, now since you've given us the rundown of what it's like to work with founders and being a founder on your own, I'm going to have to ask for your top 3 pieces of advice that you would give a founder or startup.
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. Do it. Absolutely.
Funny how
we're done. See you next week. Yeah.
They do it jokingly.
Don't do it.
Man, a lot of people say that. Anyway, I find it's telling.
It is a labor of love. I will say.
Looking for relief. That's all it is.
The reality is, being a founder it's really hard. It's really hard. And anybody who tells you it's easy has either forgotten, or they're trying to put on a strong face, because it is hard. It is emotional. It is your livelihood. And as soon as you start getting into hiring people, then you're accountable to other people's livelihood. And it's a lot. It's a heavy load to carry. And so I think take that seriously, but also know that you're not alone in that struggle. And there's going to be days that are not great, but the days that are great are so much better than the great days working for someone else. because it is your blood, sweat, and tears that you've put into this work, and it is your name and it is your company. And I think that's just the truth. Not that working for someone else is bad. We've all worked for other people. There's a lot of value in that too, but it is hard. And I think walking into it with, a very real expectation is important. I would say that's number one. I'll put that as number one. I would say number two is don't do it alone. Whether you have a business partner or you're surrounded by a group of strong advisors you trust who can just talk to you and hear you, people who maybe you're not necessarily in competition with, but people who might have the same experiences as you have had or will have. There's just so much to be said for peer groups, for having a mentor, seek one out, even just invite another founder for coffee and just have a chat. Being alone when it's hard makes it even harder. And so not doing it alone is really important. I'm so grateful that I have a business partner that I can come to. Founders, I think often when they get into a place, they've built a team, they have an executive team that's around them, but not necessarily a peer to them. It can be very easily, you can easily become isolated. So don't become isolated as a founder, really make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who have shared experiences so that you don't become isolated and you don't suffer from death by comparison and looking around and going, that CEO has it together and I'm a failure, because you're not. So I think that would be number two, is make sure you surround yourself with good people you trust. Let's see. I don't know. Maybe number three would be, as a part of that, I've certainly been a sufferer of this. Don't recognize imposter syndrome for what it is. There are so many times that I have had conversations with people. Do I deserve this? Am I doing it right? Who gave me this power? Who gave me all this stuff? I'm not responsible enough to handle this. But I think it's really important to remember that by virtue of doing the thing, it means that you can do the thing. And that's hard. And I think particularly for women, but for everyone, imposter syndrome can be a real confidence killer. And just really acknowledging it for what it is and just saying, even in your daily practice, I've sat with CEOs and sometimes I look around and I'm like, I'm sitting with a kind of a big deal. And who let me in this room? But the reality is I've earned my business and my reputation and my expertise from 20 years of doing this practice. And so get comfortable reminding yourself of that. I think that's really important wherever you are in your career journey.
I dig it.
Yeah, I would say as a kid, you kind of look up to adults thinking that they got it together and like, oh, okay, they're not stressed about anything. And then you become an adult and you're like looking for that adult that's got it all together and realizing, oh, wait, that's not real.
It's funny though. You still...
Yeah, the only people who have it together are like people
when
who
you
pretend
still
really
see
well.
those people,
Or people who don't have any responsibilities.
You see the ones who have something together, but there's probably another aspect of their life that is totally.
It's so common to see someone who's successful at either what you're aiming for or just in another industry, and you're like, clearly they've earned it and they are awesome and they figured it out. And it's not that much different than your kids thinking the parents haven't figured out. And then you find out they're just normal people like everybody else. But what's really weird, and I don't think this has ever happened to me, but I'm getting old, so it might, is when you're now that person and you don't even realize it, that they think you have it all together and that you've done something. And you're like, I'm just making it up as I go, dude.
Seriously. You guys invited me to
Aren't
join
we
this
all?
conversation. I'm like, who wants me to be on their podcast? But okay, I'll take it. You just got to show up. And I think for me, the idea of, are you helping people? Is there something that you can share? For me, if there's something I can share from my experience that's helpful to someone else, that's all I'm interested
That's all
in
we're
doing.
ever here for. I love it.
If anybody wants to learn more about Offset or Kickdry, where can they find you online?
Yeah. So they can reach us they can find our website at weareoffset.co.co, or feel free to reach out to me directly. I love having conversations with folks. I am here to talk shop, to be available for opportunities to support people's businesses, all the above. And my email address is Ann, A-N-N, at weareoffset.co.
We will put that link in the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you.
That wraps up this episode of the BizDev Podcast. Thanks for listening. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at hello@thebigpixel.net. Or connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. BizDev is a production of Big Pixel, a US-based provider of UX, design, strategy, and custom software. This podcast is edited by Matt McCracken, yes, that is his name, and me, Christy Pronto, marketing guru for Big Pixel.